Welcome everyone to the practitioners panel. I see on the audience that many of you have had a very good evening yesterday, plus the weather, which is not as nice as it used to be yesterday, well, caused that some of us are delayed, but probably during the panel there would be more people coming. I am going to chair this practitioners panel together with Colin Kopus, who is sitting next to me, and both of us decided to sit on this end of a table to demonstrate, to show that who is the most important is not a chair, but practitioners really. And this panel has been co-organized with the Association of Polish Cities, and we have with us Tomek Podkański. I should add that we worked together in one room in mid-1980s, very long time ago. But Tomek is now vice director of an office of the association, and I would like to ask Tomek to introduce the panelists, mayors who are present on this panel.
Welcome everyone. I hope that the room will fill up during our session much more as it is compared to now. I would like to say a few words about Association of Polish Cities. It is the largest association, municipal association in Poland, partner to central government on a number of legislative issues. So legislative lobbying is one of the of our duties. The other objective of our existence is assistance in exchange of experience between cities, and it is important because, as you well know from literature, from your own knowledge, and from Paweł and Colin from yesterday, Poland is one of the most decentralized countries in Europe, with 1/3 of public funds in the hands of local government managers, close to 15% of GDP produced by local governments. 2/3 of public infrastructure is built by local governments. Local governments have a very strong constitutional position. Mayors have local governments have wide competences which are effectively guarded by the legal system. Mayors have strong competences, strong roles, and just to sum it up, we as local governments believe that Poland is developing not because of governments, but despite of governments and because of local governments and entrepreneurs. So we are quite proud of what has happened, how Poland was developed over the last 27 years. Looking at, and today Practitioners Forum will show you that problems that our cities of a different size and located in different places face similar problems as cities in your countries. I looked at the agenda of yesterday presentations and today presentation, and I see the same topics as those that will be probably in a moment discussed by our colleagues. We share similar problems as local governments in your countries, which is aging population, which is migrations. We live in United Europe, hopefully for long, and therefore freedom of movement makes our migration much wider. Therefore there are cities and regions which are beneficiary of these migrations, and Warsaw and Milano placed in the metropolitan area would be beneficiary, and other areas, other sub-regions like Wałbrzych would be potentially losers unless they take a special strategy to counteract which takes place. Urban sprawl, which is a result of poor legislative framework in the area of spatial planning, is also part of our Polish reality. Different aspects of citizens' participation, plus and cons, I think will also be discussed, and you know these subjects from your countries. And finally, partnerships, ability to form networks, ability to create partnerships between units, public units and private units, public authorities, different public authorities, including municipalities. All three panelists, which I'm going to present now, are practitioner experience and successful practitioners of intermunicipal cooperation. Two of them in the metropolitan area, and one of them in creating, in fact, an agglomeration from smaller municipalities. Michał Olszewski, for the last 7 years, deputy mayor of Warsaw, is a person who is heading most important processes, development processes in the city, namely strategic development planning. He is also the face of the city in terms of all aspects of public communication, citizens' participation, and it is, I can say, a good face of the process. So and he is also a leader of the process of intermunicipal cooperation in the metropolitan area, the process which is easier in Poland than in other countries because of existence of structural development funds, but still requires a lot of careful. It requires a careful and thoughtful approach. Wiesława Kwiatkowska is a long-term manager in local governments. For a number of years, secretary of the office, in your terms, CEO in the municipality, and now first term as the mayor. She's opening the municipality for the external world, building partnerships with close neighbors, with more distant neighbors. And she is building partnerships within metropolitan area and with the metropolitan area. And finally, Roman Szełemej, mayor of Wałbrzych, whose role is absolutely special. He is, as you know from the leaflet, a medical doctor, cardiologist, manager of health of hospitals, and he took over the leadership in the Wałbrzych area in the probably worst moment, one of the worst moments in the history of this area, and now it is a leader of intermunicipal cooperation. What he gave his colleagues, mayors of neighboring municipalities, is a hope that if they cooperate, they can overcome structural problems that are present in this formerly coal mining area. I believe with this short introduction, we should give them a floor to maybe using the sequence from the leaflet and the sequence.
I'll make you for the
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I would like to take over to Paweł Swianiewicz, because he will present the fourth panelist.
Yes, we have, because those three panelists you have in your program, but we have also a slide for you, the fourth panelist, who is also Polish. His name is Tomasz Sudra, but he moved out of Poland in 1969 for a moment, and this moment is now almost 50 years. He has some academic experience including lecturing at MIT and Harvard, but most of his life, Tomek has been a practitioner in spatial planning, working in many countries for a long time in Mexico, and now for over 30 years, Tomek has been living in Nairobi, Kenya, working for UN Habitat, working on urban development issues in Africa and around the world, mostly in developing countries. And we thought that having this very different perspective than a perspective of Polish local government leaders, Polish practitioners, might be enriching this panel. And finally, to finish the introduction to the panel, I want to give floor to Colin, and, well, you might ask.
Firstly, I wanted to thank Pavel for inviting me and to say hello to a wonderful group of guests as well. I'm really looking forward to what you've got to say. I just was going to say very, very quickly, I'm the director of something called the Local Governance Research Unit at De Montfort University, which is in Leicester in England. And also, I don't know how Pavel manages this, but he's managed to get very English weather today. We got here on Sunday and it was far too hot, and lo and behold, by the time we come to today, the weather's changed. Pavel also, I'm not quite, I think rather cruelly has just given me a list of all of the speakers and where you come from. I think it was to listen to my pronunciation of your names and cities, so I'm not going to do that because I don't want to embarrass either myself or you. But I will say just very, very quickly, the unit I run based at the University of De Montfort consists of about 9 academics who all focus very, very carefully and very closely on the work of local government, not just local government in my country, but internationally as well. We work very closely with our own mayors. We do have a strange thing in England. Out of 352 councils for a population of 53 million, we also have only 16 of our mayors that are directly elected by all of the voters. The rest of our mayors are not actually called mayors, they're called council leaders, and they are appointed by the council itself, but their role is very similar. They are the political head of their council. So we do an awful lot of work, obviously academic work, but also a lot of practitioner work, working with councillors, working with council leaders, working with mayors. The city my university is based in is one of the only 16 cities that does have a directly elected mayor. And interestingly enough, I'll just say this and I'll shut up. The mayor of the elected mayor of Leicester used to be a member of Parliament, and he resigned from Parliament to become the mayor of the city. And I remember interviewing him at one point, and obviously the question was asked, why did you leave Parliament to become the mayor? And he said, because I wanted a proper job. And I think that really sums it up. I wrote a paper with that title. Being an elected mayor, it's a proper job. And I'm very interested to hear what the people who do have this proper job have got to say about it. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I thought you would ask the first speaker, since your pronunciation, you are afraid of your pronunciation and you don't want to give us occasion to have fun. Well, maybe so, except we made proceed in the order which is on the leaflet. So we would start from Vice Mayor of Warsaw, Michał Olszewski.
So once again, in Warsaw we met each other with some of you, but Wednesday evening, the absence in the room is for me very good proof that you enjoy the city, and I'm very happy with it. So I believe that such events are very important, not only to take some knowledge, but also to taste the city in practice. So, but let me address a few words about the challenges of Warsaw. Of course, the challenges we may look on challenges in different way. different approach. I will focus only on those challenges which are connected with the city management. So I don't want to tell you the story about what kind of challenges we have in environmental issues, either in some topics related to the public transportation. And also, just at the beginning, I want to emphasize that you have you have a luck, because partly we are as a 3 cities, we are representing 3 different cities. City of Warsaw is the unique city in Poland, to be honest, because it's the only one city who is more than 1 million, actually 1.7 officially. We believe that we are more, something about 2 million. It's because of some fault in counting of citizens, which are partly not registered in the city, and they are not paying the taxes here. So it might be also a challenge for us how to attract to make them pay the taxes in the city. But my colleagues from the different cities are representing the cities who has their own specificity. To be honest, Wałbrzych is a very good example, as was said, of the transformation process, and Milano is also a very nice and well-developed city in the neighborhood of a huge agglomeration, within the huge agglomeration of city of Warsaw. Let me go through the very short presentation just to draw your attention to some of topics which are important at this stage of our development. Cities in last 27 years, became more decentralized in general. Actually, now we have a pivot in our decentralization process in general, because the current government tried to stop this decentralization and try to get it back, just to centralize back some our competences and some of our, let's say, of area of our freedom of taking some decision on our at our level. But what was an effect of last 10 years in our cities is a huge process of the participation. And it's true, we became much more participatory approached than 10 years ago. Every Polish city, to be honest, and every of us can say that this process is ongoing. But it's still not satisfactory process, to be honest, because we still have a very low level of turnout in local elections. Usually an average is less than 50% of the residents are voting in local elections, of voters, of course, not the residents. And in comparison to the other countries, it's not satisfactory. So what we start to do at our level, we started to prove to our citizens that they can have an influence into daily life in their neighborhoods. Firstly, it was five years ago, first Polish cities run the participatory budgeting. We started it 4 years ago, but still we have a typical rule in social media, which might be like copy-paste to the participatory budgeting in our cities, because 1% of the citizens are proposing the solutions, proposing the projects, 10%, so 9% are commenting, are voting for these projects, and 90% are mute. They are not engaged. So it's a proof that even if we are offering something where people can make a change in their neighborhood, can have an influence into the budgeting, into the decision taken at the local level, they are using it not in a satisfactory way from our perspective, of course, because it's a freedom of course to choose, and it's also a freedom to vote or not in participatory budgeting. We have now the biggest budget, of course, because we are the biggest city, but also the biggest budget which is going through the participatory budgeting. the second biggest after Łódź actually per capita in the country. And actually those days in June we have voting for the participatory budgeting. Maybe in this year we're going to have some increase of number of voters, number of people who are engaged. The second thing is public consultations. From one side, we have always a huge pressure for local governments to publicly consult any decision which might be taken on the local level. On the other hand, only 13% are giving us opinion about some decisions that might be taken in the city. So from the one side we have a group of protests. Sometimes it's NIMP process, sometimes are lobbyists, local lobbyists, sometimes are a group of interest which we address some local acts, for example, or investments. On the other hand, only a few people are, at the end of the day, giving us the response. So that's the reason why in the new strategy, our goal is to make this process much more engaging citizens, much more the processes of local management, much more engaging, and to increase number of citizens that coming back to us with someday opinions, proposals, and comments. The second challenge is a typical challenge which is out of our competences. So because we may increase a number of people who are voting, we may increase, attract them, invite them into the process, but with this challenge, it's very hard to do anything on our side without any change on the national level. Why? Warsaw is the only one city in Poland, and that's why I told you that we are unique, who never had the process of the reprivatization solved. And still we are facing a problem of restitution of the land, which is regulated, and that's the funny thing, by the legal act from 1947, which was never cancelled. We sent many of proposals of regulation to the Polish Parliament. At the end of the day, we forced Parliament to adopt only one small legal act, which partly solved the problems with people who maybe in unfair way can restitute the land, not in fair way. Sometimes they are crime, to be honest, situation in our opinion. And the situation changed a year ago when one of the media started to describe the process of the restitution of the land. At the end of the day, the only government who is blamed on it, on lack of the solutions, now is local government. But to be honest, it's also a part of the political game in our country. So we are partly happy that we are solving now many of problems on the restitution of the land. But on the other hand, we are paying a very huge price for it because because usually people are not understanding this very complicated process, which is from the border, from the line between two systems, from the 1947 legal act and current administrative law. And still we have 27% of total area of the city, which is covered by many of restitution claims from the people who try to get back the properties which was nationalized in the 40s, so just after the Second World War. We are solving, for example, many of problems having some our competences. Just to give you an example, we have such paradox, and if I'm also responsible for the social housing, many of social houses were restituted. And in this case, we are offering to these families that they can come back to the another building, which is our social house. And it's the only solution that we may propose because we can't block the process of the restitution of the land, even if this is a building who is public purpose building. Public purpose, I mean the social housing. And even after this crisis from last year, even if we already paid very huge price, political price for this process, still Polish Parliament are not interested in the regulation of this problem in 100%. So we solve it only in 20% by the legal act that we forced to adopt in the Polish Parliament in the last mandate of the Parliament. Now the Parliament is only our governing party is only interested into making some fights with local governments on this issue, mostly with the mayor, which I'm representing here, Mayor Gronkiewicz-Waltz. Sprawling city, it's not problem only of Warsaw, but Warsaw is very untypical case of this sprawling problem. Why? Because if you only compare the area of our city and the number of population in our city, and you compare it with the most dense populating city, which is Paris in our country, in our continent, you will already see that we are 5 times less populated than Paris. Paris has 100 square kilometer, we are 517 square kilometers, and we have almost the same population. Paris is 2.2. As a city, we are, as I told you, about 2 million. So it means that in our case, we have a structure of the city which is very dense populated. A lot less dense populated than any European capital, any European big city. And this process is not provoked by the development of the city like in many other cities in Europe. It's not provoked by this sprawling problem which booming in Europe in last 20 years. That's the problem of planning of our city just after Second World War, which was a plan just not to make from Warsaw a central and dense populated city in the downtown, or just to make it much more polycentric. And we are very polycentric city. We are composed from 18 districts. Every district has his own downtown, to be honest, or some of them they have many of such downtowns, many of local centers. So our strategy is now just to make the city mix use in every district, just not to provoke the commuting problem within the districts. But to be honest, it's very hard to us to make a pivot in the development and to make the city much more dense, because the expectations and also it's our policy goes in this direction, just to not to take the too many natural resources that we have in our area, and for example to deforest the city, because we are still one of those cities who are from the big cities has very big potential in nature. We have 60% of our city which is forested, and we still try to increase number of forests in our city. And we are the only one capital city in the European Union which has a border of the national park within the city limits, which might be also an element of a proof that we are very, let's say, populated and with the structure which is unfortunately sprawled city. What we try to do just to face this problem is, as I said, to make the spatial planning much more polycentric, not to concentrate the number of labor places, workplaces in one area, which is a huge problem when the business is also in many cases attracted just to make very monocentric districts. We have several of such monocentric districts, and our problem in our city was from the beginning of planning after Second World War that functionalists which decided to plan the city in 50s, 60s, decided to make the structure of the city very monocentric. So we had a structure, one district was only residential, one district was only industrial, one was mostly the services. At the end of the day, the transformation, which was very natural at the in 90s, provoked the switch of the one monocentric culture into the another monocentric culture. So many of areas from industrial areas became residential, either services, either office, and not the mixed use. So it was one of the problem which we try to now shift in the other way. The other thing is that local governments are not very strong in spatial planning, to be honest, and that's even if we adopt local plan, even if we adopt spatial planning, we don't have the instruments which we have are not very strong. Environmental protection, it's a problem of the whole country, to be honest. We solved as a country the problem with the water management, with wastewater management. The problem was solved many years ago, also thanks to the entry to the European Union. Not only money, but mostly because of very high standards that we have to meet in very short time. With the waste management, it's still in progress, but the most challenging problem is the air pollution. And the air pollution, as probably you know, it's not only a problem of Warsaw, it's a problem of every European city. But in our case, the problem is very paradoxical, to be honest, because we are the biggest city in our country, but we are not most polluted city in our country. We are in probably just somewhere in the middle. Why? Because Warsaw has one of advantage which help us to keep the air in very good condition. It's the biggest network of district heating, which help us to tackle the problem of the low emission, mostly coming from the individual houses. But on the other hand, unfortunately, we are surrounded by these small towns which don't have the central district heating. Maybe it's not a case of Milano, but
yes, it is.
yeah, yes, it is. Okay, but so the paradox of our situation is that by the assessment of the air pollution, we know that the air is less polluted in Warsaw than in neighborhood, which is somehow a paradox because usually the situation is indifferent. So the most polluted areas in Warsaw which we have are the areas which are at the border of our city. So that's why we are working very hardly in the cooperation with local governments surrounding us, just to not provoke the commuting by the individual transportation to the city. We are investing now in the network of common bike and ride. Yeah, I'm finishing. And also we are working on some solutions how to tackle the low emission. And this is the last point, but very important. We are probably only one capital city who is working very hardly on the nature areas. Why? Because we have it in our borders, the nature areas. The most important axis, most important area which is a challenge for us, and we try to invest a lot of money and our efforts into this area, is Vistula Valley. Vistula Valley, which is also a very unique case of the Nature 2000 area within the downtown of the huge metropolises. And it take only 4.5% of our total area in the city, but still we have 200 very various species of birds which are living in this area, and we are investing several millions each year just to invest into the artificial islands for the birds, just to channel the traffic of recreational traffic of the citizens, just to not to provoke the conflict within the nature and people who are using this area for the recreation, etc., etc. So, as I said, that's the only several points of our challenges, which might be interesting for you from scientific point of view. But they are, as I told you, they are very specific for some of them. They are very specific to our Warsaw case. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm sorry I had to catch your eye there. It's really awful having to try and to stop a deputy mayor while he's talking, particularly if you want to come back to the city at any point. I don't want to get out the airport and be told by the taxi driver, no, you're not allowed back in. But thank you very much. That's absolutely fascinating insight to the issues around the development and the government of Warsaw. I've just realised on the list of names that Pavel gave me, I can probably have a very good stab at pronouncing 3 of them, but not the next one. So I'm going to have to hand back over to you to introduce the next mayor for us.
Well, it's easy, Colin. Mayor of Milanówek, Wiesława Kwiatkowska, just to remind you, a relatively small town, 30 kilometers southwest of Warsaw, so it is still in a wide suburb zone of Warsaw.
What can I say after that? What the mayor of Warsaw said. Milanówek is very, very small city, about 60,000 inhabitants. It is a garden city. And located, like you said, about 30 kilometers from Warsaw, but we are very small, like I said, about 13.5 square kilometers. The community of Milanówek is typical for the rich suburb of Warsaw, and that the Warsaw for us is like heart, because every function of life is in Warsaw for our inhabitants. So the Warsaw is very important for us, and in our city people sleeping and goes to Warsaw for all day. But they want to have very, very nice, very good, and very comfortable life when they come back from work. I'd like to say something about Milanówek because it is very important to say. It is, like I said, suburbs of Warsaw. It is a perfect example of commuter. Like I said, about 80% of the development is single-family housing in large garden. And the employment is quite low. Nowadays it is just 4%. A significant part of the city is covered by the care of conservator. It is also houses and trees. We've got a lot of oak trees, and this is the point, so people like Milanówek very much. The annual city's budget is nearly 8 million zloty, so it is not much, not less, but half of them, it comes from residents' income tax. It is very important because we have we've got only citizens, no industrial, also some shops, and just sleeping for the people. And in this area, we've got the challenges for the manager of such small town. It is very difficult after the Warsaw said what of the challenges we've got, but I think for me, the most important is present and new inhabitants and their expectation, because the expectations of the inhabitants are high and related to the comfort of his living. The quality of life is very important. I call this care because most of people in productive age commute to Warsaw, like I said, and expect a high level of services redundant. Today, families, of course. I mean children and elders. Influx of new residents with high expectation of quality of life. And I think it is especially education. It is the most important for them, especially kindergartens and primary schools. seamless transport to Warsaw, of course, roads and railway. Communication with city with bike path and media. First, I don't know what is roads or internet? What is the most important for people? I don't know why. Because young people said without internet they don't want to live in Milano. And the eldest people said roads is the most important. And so we have to build this and this. Without internet, high quality internet, not just internet, because internet we've got, we are, but now we have to build very quick quality internet because young people need it very much. What's yet? Of course, water and sewerage, it is normal, and social services, culture and healthcare. And then people who work in Warsaw can go to the job and leave children and learners for us, and we all time got only them. The second point, I think, it goes from this first point, from the space challenges, is elderly, the pensions of the local population. Very often, they are remaining without family support and have growing expressing for quality of life. They need to organize their time and services. They live longer and expect the different forms of spending free time. Many forms of activities like gymnastics, swimming, and etc. At the same time, they require proper care expressed in high quality care services, including, of course, rehabilitation. In Milanówek, we've got a lot of elderly people who are running to societies of elderly, including, for example, University of Third Age. And the next problem, the next challenger, not problem, I think, is a social activity. But the mayor of Warsaw said the same like I'd like to say. They want to know everything, but when it's the budget of participate, they do nothing. They don't use in this. We start to activities them of the social activities because I think it is very important. In a small town like Milanówek, it is much more important than the other things. And we start to teach them. Because, like I said, roads, no good roads are our problems. I start to preparing the plan for the build the roads and asking our citizens what kind of roads they would like to have, how the roads should look. And goes to the house and in every address we put the information about the meeting, about those roads, and then they start to come to us and talking about their road. Of course, every people from this one city, from one street comes only want to talk about only this one street, but it starts to open our citizens to talk with us. It is a very difficult process, and in my opinion, it is one of the most important processes to build in Milanówek for build the social activity citizens. And the budget, the participant budget is very interesting in Milanówek because we start 3 years ago, and on this year, the winner was from Smogoton 2016, recently most planned than filter smog. and we start to build in Milanówek. I don't know how it was, but we will see. Okay. And the other challenges is system of self-determination. We are a satellite town like Milanówek in unequal partner from Warsaw. Milanówek residents enjoy the benefits of capital, work, like I said, access to culture, university like this, and the form for quality of the local economy are very important. Common use of EU funds bring cities closer to each other, but it is difficult to maintain equality because of financial capability and sometimes conflicts of interest. However, our experience shows that we learn quickly and effectively from cooperation both with Warsaw and between smaller neighbors municipalities. Local authorities expect joint transport cooperation. For us, very important is joint ticket or bicycle path building and park and ride, of course. Local authority, and at the same time, we have shown that it is in the event of a third of independent, we are able to unite and to work together for the benefit of our people. In the end, I'd like to say something about problem to be a mayor in small cities like Milanówek, but I think it is not only in my city, it is a problem in Poland, I think. Because in order to, based on my experience in managing the city, nowadays mayor is not just an administration of the city, it goes future. Challenges are west. For example, regulation does not foster firm and bold decision. Nevertheless, I feel that courage and determination for development of our small farmland is that our community really looks forward to. That is why I recognize myself as the coordinator of the city. Maybe we should be a leader, not only a coordinator, and then our small cities especially, but big, I think also in Poland, will become be better and grows up. Thank you very much.
Colin is still refusing to try his pronunciation of Polish names, so it is my pleasure to invite Mayor of Wałbrzych, Roman Szełemej.
Thank you very much. Reading the title of this roundtable discussion as Challenges in City Management, I think it's the challenges that we face in Wałbrzych is a good example of the general idea of this discussion and panel. I was named as a deputy, or let's say a proxy of Mayor of Wałbrzych in 2011 by the decision of Prime Minister Donald Tusk, at that time acting being a Prime Minister, because my predecessor decided to resign due to some allegations which were actually eventually not confirmed. However, I was named as a proxy Mayor of Wałbrzych by the decision of Prime Minister. All of a sudden, it was unexpected to me. I was at that time pretty successful based on the opinion of patients and other people successfully practicing cardiologist and CEO of the local hospital. And I decided not to take the proper job at that time, because I think the proper job is the most important for me job is still in hospital and in my practice. However, I had to at least limited my medical activity to be a chief of the department of cardiology. I'm still acting as a chief of the department, and decided to take the real proper job as a physician and cardiologist trying to resuscitate a dying city based on the opinion of everyone. At that time, I'm not a typical politician, and I take that challenge in 2011 in the probably worst time and moment of the history of the city. Wałbrzych is 120 more or less thousand inhabitant city, located in the very much southwestern corner of Poland. It is located much closer to Berlin, to Prague, and to Vienna than to Warsaw. It's much easier even to take a short trip to Prague than to Warsaw. It's improving just recently. However, it represents the way the outskirts of Poland, including western part of Poland, were isolated by the poor infrastructure, communication infrastructure. For centuries, it was a city mainly representing the coal mine industry and all branches of industry related to coal mining. In the middle of 90s, Polish government, it was a decision of the central government, which is very important point, decided to close all of the sudden, I wouldn't say unexpectedly. However, the decision was made just one day, and it was implemented within months rather than many years when we compare such a decision of the closure of all coal mines in this region. And in a contrary to the decision of British government and German government and French government, they decided to continue such process of closing for many years. And still, for example, in rural area, the program of closing the coal mining industry still is active. I mean, 25 or, I don't know, maybe 30 years after launching that program. In Wałbrzych area, which is Wałbrzych area and functional, I would say functional urban area of Wałbrzych, including Nowa Ruda, Wałbrzych, Kamienna Góra, and other small villages located around the city of Wałbrzych. The population of this area is more or less 450 inhabitants. The decision to close the whole industry of this area was implemented within months. Can you imagine the city of 100, at that time, 35 inhabitants working in, I would say, 90% of people's professional activity was related for coal mining industry, including schools, including social agencies, including hospitals even. I worked at that time in the hospital called the Regional Hospital for Coal Miners. It was state-owned hospital, however, financed mainly by the coal mining industry. And all of the sudden, simply, they turned off the light in the city. And unemployment was at that time reaching the level of 40%. And for years, for next 10 or 11, 12 years, it was the typical example of declining in social activities, industry activities, economic activities. City was in the process of shrinkage. The population reached a level of 20,000. I mean, 20,000 of inhabitants simply migrated to Wrocław, which is a very dynamic capital of the region, which is located very close to, it's 60 kilometers north from Wałbrzych. They migrated to Germany, Ireland, Poland, and now the population is stable, which is one of the success of the team I am representing here, a team of my colleagues of the staff of the city office, and as a main challenge still existing now, 20 years after the closure of the industry, is the budget deficit, the condition of infrastructure, affordable housing for the people which were for many years living in the houses sponsored and maintained by the coal mines. And now the quality of the housing, of the old housing, is very poor. So we have to simply almost level some blocks of this within different quarters of the city and create a new housing programs. And we are doing that with the help of the central government in the creating affordable housing for people which are not able to take a loan from the bank and buy a private apartments or take part in the development, in the building developments, which is very much intensively growing in Wrocław, in metropolitan areas around the regional capitals of Poland, including, first of all, in Warsaw. So the challenges is also the environmental residues of a coal mining industry, which is the only industry in this region for, let's say, 200 years. And when you take a look at the situation is in Basque area in northern Spain, in Ruhr area in Germany, Pas-de-Calais in France and neighboring Belgium areas, in Wales, in Great Britain, they represent the same pattern of ecological challenges, like residue of and mountains of stones located in many cases in the very center of cities, because those residues of coal mining were that kind of a storage of those stones after the process of concentrating, of cleaning what was taken from underground, were located very close to collieries, to coal mines ships. So it's one challenge. The second one is that the pollution of the soil, pollution of the land, and there is very unique, specific, I would say, environmental challenges and challenge in wider view is that the society of those cities is changed because of the coal mining. I mean, the profile of society in every coal mining city or post-coal mining city is representing they are very similar. People were totally in other areas of Poland. We decided, I'm just reading the abstract of the presentation done during this conference regarding the ITI initiative in Europe and in Poland, and we decided with my initiative to create a so-called functional urban area project of Aglomeracja Wałbrzyska, which is the ITI, which is using the ITI tool to use in a better way the funds created by the EU decision to create this tool of ITI. We are pretty successful in concentrating the community's activity for projects developing this area, and we established in 2011, which is 6 years ago, right after the decision to name me as a proxy mayor, we decided to create the initiative of 22 communities located around Wałbrzych to create a functional urban activity project called Aglomeracja Wałbrzyska, and we now we are delivering, we created different projects and now executing these projects and spending more or less 1 billion zloty, which we managed to create from the regional budget for EU funds. Let's put it this way. So we are pretty successful in different areas to escape of that worst moment of our history in that region. However, there are many challenges we are facing. Once again, it's depopulation, infrastructure, balancing development within the region of Lower Silesia, which is always the question of how to compete with Wrocław, very successful recent history. It's of course competing or facing the ideas of central government to strongly redefine the frame of financial local policies, etc., etc. So it's very interesting. I have a pleasure to listen to challenges facing the mayor of my colleague, a mayor of Warsaw, but actually it's rather a challenge how to spend money in even better way that it's recently has been done. In Wałbrzych, we are facing the challenge how to find money for those pretty essential needs and demands on the local population and the community of this part of Poland. Thank you.
That was, thank you very much for a very impassioned description of the issues that your city is facing, and being somebody who's lived in a former mining area, not as a miner, I hasten to add, and sometime after it had the mining industry had closed, I could relate very much to a lot of the things that you were saying about the devastation that is often caused for communities and citizens when a major industry collapses. And as you rightly pointed out, it seemed to be a little bit more stark and a little bit more accelerated process than most certainly happened in England. So thank you very much for that description. I actually can introduce the next person, because I think this name I might be able to handle, if that's okay with you. So I think we now move over to Tomasz Sudra. I don't know whether I got the...
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful.
From the... That's picking up. I've only been here 3 days and I'm picking up the already. From UN Habitat and latterly based in Nairobi, and I think you're going to tell us about some of your experiences there.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the correct pronunciation, especially of my first name, with sh. Yeah, this will be a very different presentation, really. I'm going to talk about a challenge or challenges which most of the planners and urban development professionals face in two specific areas. One is issue of data and lack of data, or unavailability of useful data, even though plenty of data may be around, and issue of the need of early involvement of stakeholders in the planning and development process, of all those who will be affected or whose interests will be affected by what we are planning to do. And to begin, I will take you for a moment 40 years back to Boston, to USA, where the superhighway construction was in a big swing in American cities, and in Boston the process has been stopped. The population revolted, and today you can still see, many years later, 40 years later, some of the multi-level intersections in the middle of nowhere. They were built first, and nothing was built between them. Somebody did not have the right data. Somebody took the decisions without consultations with the stakeholders. It was not really somebody, it was the whole process, and process was stopped. And then Boston Transportation Planning Review has been created, and I enjoyed working on it, and as an idea to develop through participatory processes completely new response to the mobility needs to be improved. And as a result, for example, Southwest Expressway was never built. Instead of that, Boston has built Orange Line extension of the metro with schools, parks, and gardens in a kind of line over it. From this example, I want to make fast forward to today in Africa, because I will base what I'm going to tell you on my experience from there. So first, as a brief introduction on urban mobility in Sub-Saharan Africa. As some of us know, maybe not everybody, street network and road network in the cities have been planned for individual cars. In colonial period, and then also by elites of the independent countries. Effectively 5% of population. Others who use this road network are those who are passengers of the presently existing public transport, which are collective taxis, formal and informal, tricycles, and even individual taxis where there is a passenger behind the motorcyclist. And all this combination of different modes, none of them really very efficiently moving people, create tremendous traffic jam, waste of time, pollution, and costs resulting from that. There is a wake-up since few years process, I would say, to this reality, and number of things are being done. And the possible solutions that are considered is moving to bigger buses, of course. Bus rapid transit on separate lanes is kind of in mind of many. Issue of rail is being considered, old railways to be kind of revived and maybe some new built. And then, very important, non-motorized transport. Facilities for walking and biking. As I have mentioned, only 5% people drive cars, maybe 30 to 40% go on this rather chaotic public transport, and all the rest is walking or biking. Any intervention would require data and information, of course. And traditional urban transportation studies don't provide really answers. They are appropriate for this 5% on the highway. Also, any intervention requires, from the beginning, contact with all stakeholders. I want to give one quick example from South Africa, where the first public transport, massive public transport has been built in Sub-Saharan Africa. In Johannesburg, in Rea Vaya system, they have employed besides planners and so on, the specialist in mediation, in order to mediate between the city and all those involved in public transportation as it was at that moment, all those owners and drivers of informal taxis and others. And as a result, the new system that was created includes as shareholders those people, and includes them as some of them as employees and so on. Another city in South Africa, Port Elizabeth in Nelson Mandela Bay, did not do it. They, rather than involving with everybody who's presently dealing with transportation and providing extensive consultation with the users, they went more technical way, developed the project, created the system of special lanes, and even purchased the buses, and they took the chairperson of the Association of Minibus Owners to Bogota in Colombia to show him how fantastically efficient the system is there, the bus rapid transit. Well, what happened, this gentleman was shot dead. He was killed. And then the revolt of the owners of minibuses and of the drivers paralyzed the transportation system, and politically was not possible to launch existing, prepared to launch new solution. Of course, nobody wants these things to happen. If I now move from South Africa to East Africa, where I'm involved with Addis Ababa, Nairobi, and Kampala, I can talk a little bit about how we try to learn from those experiences. One of the ways is to try to get information, of course, all available from previous studies, that can exist that would be inform us about the most appropriate solutions for transportation system that would public transport that would substitute present chaos. But the other is the field research with use of the, among others, universities and university students. In fact, Columbia University from New York, in collaboration with Nairobi University, has conducted a very interesting studies of the existing transportation of those minibuses and produced a map which looks a little bit like a London Underground map, but with much more many lines representing these different lines of existing collective taxis. And how did they do it? Well, they did it by traveling on the minibus lines by measuring, counting both at specific points as you do traffic studies, but also on the buses themselves, and by interacting with passengers and the drivers, and this way organically built information of the present situation has been generated. Also, the meeting with the associations of present transportation providers are going on, plus meetings in the communities. I'm not saying that everything is ideal, but I would very much hope that when Nairobi transportation system, public transport, will be launched, and this will be bus rapid transit lines on special lanes. There are also proposals of rail solutions, and some in fact implemented on the existing rail lines. They will not only be efficient technically, but also they will be following the lines and the organization which reflects the needs of majority of population. The important challenge here, in fact, is that on one hand, we need to get those who are the poor and the poorest being able to use the system. And the system is not just those bus rapid transit lines. We talk about multimodal system of interaction between them and remaining minibuses and tricycle taxis and walkways and bicycle lanes. Everything should be taught in totality and in the integrated way. But we also need to get out of the cars, if we can manage, as many as possible of individual drivers. This 5% is really clogging the streets now and being in the constant traffic jam. So also for their purpose, the public transport has to be effective and attractive. Finally, one other challenge of which we face in all three cities here, I can say, is the challenge of exporters of consultancy and technology from rich countries, from Asia, Africa, and America, who try to sell their expertise and find the solutions, often without sufficient local knowledge, and often, not always, but often in self-serving way, and trying to push technologies which are inappropriate and costly, and miss opportunity of using these developments to create local employment, local capacity of production, of equipment, and other local advantages. To some degree, and I don't want to be, no, maybe I, okay, want to be quoted. What has happened in Addis Ababa is to some degree a case in point. Addis Ababa just opened about a year ago, elevated super modern train system of 2 lines that was built by China and with the loan from China. And it is very questionable if it would have been built if it would be a result of analysis of interaction with stakeholders and proper data collecting rather than a political decision of buying attractive and beautiful technology. Well, that's probably what I wanted to share with you right now. If you wish to ask any questions, I'm here around. Today, to sum up, we do have in Sub-Saharan Africa bus rapid transit systems completely new in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Lagos, and Dar es Salaam. They function very well. And then we are process of planning and initiating construction in Kampala, Addis, and Nairobi. And the non-motorized transport systems, the bikeways and walkways are a new thing which is now mandatory with the new highways, urban highways being built in Nairobi at least, and there is also interesting development in this area, especially in Kampala, with some Dutch, by the way, assistance. Well, thank you very much.
So maybe a very short comment on these presentations. We thank very much to all the presenters. I would like to start from the last presentation, saying that it was different than the previous ones. Very important, because importance of making decisions based on real data is valid not only in other continents, also in Poland. We see it very clearly in Poland as well. However, presentations of the Polish colleagues from Polish background make me to make the following important comment about not technical but more socio-political dimension of the role of the leader. Mr. Olszewski and Mrs. Kwiatkowska from the Warsaw and Warsaw metropolitan area, their role is slightly different. They have to use different approach to playing the role of a leader than example of Mr. Szełemej from Wałbrzych. Warsaw and Milanówek communities are well-developing, fast-developing areas where local partners, private entrepreneurs, citizens are more or less, with all the respect, quite well off, and the main effort of mayor in such an area have to be directed towards moderating this development process, towards making a synergy out of activities of other strong local partners. This is how I, to summarize, see the main challenge of a leader in this area. Contrary to the role of a leader in Wałbrzych and other peripheral vis-à-vis main metropolitan areas in Poland, peripheral communities where the leader has to be a seller of hope, first of all. So this communication dimension is even more important than a technocratic, which has to be in place as well, because the main currency which will be used to assess the results of the work of mayor will be actual decisions of young people and middle-aged people to stay or leave, or if they move away for higher education, will they come back? So the main issue is selling a hope so that they stay, they develop their businesses, their careers, their family careers in this area. So main focus will be on strengthening local partners so that they take over their proper roles in local development, while in highly developing, fast developing metropolitan areas it will be rather moderating and making synergy in the activities of already strong partners.
Lovely, thank you very much for that summary. We have now about 15 minutes for questions and general discussion, so I think the best thing to do is to throw things open to you. Any questions to any of our panelists or just general comments you want to make? I will say while we're sorting out the technology, when people ask a question, if you could say who you are and where you're from, just helps. Thank you.
Of course. My name is Angelika Psenner. I'm working at Vienna University of Technology in urban planning. Thank you so much, all four of you, for your presentations. Very interesting, and of course there is a whole lot of questions arising, and it's difficult to just decide for one, but maybe I would like to know in terms of, I think it's the two mayors of Warszawa and Milano. You were telling so much about how you struggle with all the problems that you are facing right now, and maybe I would like to know if you have kind of a wish for the future or a perspective. Do you see any kind of excellent perspective for your both cities in terms of what do you think your cities could do very well, kind of if everything is working out and gentrification maybe is going on, what could your cities present to the inhabitants if everything is working out? Like, is it going to be a multifunctional average city, or does it have something special? Like, I don't know, with the industry, are you imposing university, or I don't know. I'm curious about that.
Oh, impose a university sounds awful. I'm going to collect two or three questions and then allow people to answer which of those are the most appropriate. Got, yeah, Ivan?
No, here. Ivan was first.
Yeah, Ivan Tosic from Budapest. I would ask a specific question to the Lady Mayor of Milanovec, okay? Would you accept to be in a municipal association with Warsaw, with keeping your position as a mayor, but only maybe responsible for kindergarten, elementary schools, and lower level activities, handing over the right for urban planning, strategic planning, transport, housing, to the higher level of association, where you would be part of the board? Would you accept this, and would the population of your settlement accept this?
I think I know the answer to that question, but I'll let you answer it. One more question. I think it's Mia.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I'm from Norway and Nord University. The deputy mayor of Warsaw mentioned issues with citizen participation, and I was just curious to hear a little bit about if this is a problem in the other cities, and what are you doing to improve those conditions?
I'll just hand over to the panel. Do you want to deal with the questions in any order that you sort out? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I refer to the question of Mrs. representing Vienna, as I understand. Okay. For a moment, I would like to go back to the sentence or to the term mentioned by Mr. Podkański that I was a hope seller. I really like this term. However, it's not enough to attract people to stay in a city when you compete with the very attractive alternatives for them to live. For example, integrated EU, Wrocław, another very attractive city. So, as I see your question, what kind of ideas we sell, not only hope for people to attract them, what kind of objective we would like to reach to keep the city, the area growing, and what kind of a specialty we see for such a post-industrial city as the Wałbrzych area is. First of all, we have a kind of a tool created by the central government in late 90s, which is Special Economic Zone Act. And such a special economic zone was created in the area of the community of Wałbrzych. So by using the tool of grants, central grants and the local authority grants, unfortunately, they attracted different companies from different sectors, like automotive industry, first of all, including the global companies like Toyota, to establish a very well-developed factories here. So, first of all, continuing industry activity in our city is one of the tool and the road we try to see as a way to develop and sustainable develop the region. And of course, it's quite different business. It's clean, it's eco-friendly, and it's well developed. It requires different competence, different group of professionals. And for example, in mid-90s, the number of employees in heavy industry was more or less 40,000. 40,000 people worked at that time in coal mines and related and some link to the coal mines business. Now the special economic zone is employing more or less 10,000 people, mainly engineers, technicians, well-prepared, well-educated workers. And the second objective to develop area is, of course, nature attraction. It's located in the very mountain area, full of very beautiful pieces of national heritage, like castle, palaces, museums, very interesting places, interesting to explore, interesting to discover, interesting to take a getaway for a few days. So tourism and all those activities are related to spending time and money during weekend and for longer time. It is really growing very much, particularly the idea of a golden train located in Wałbrzych or region of Wałbrzych was brought, not personally by myself, unfortunately, but a group of explorers. So tourism tourism activities, sport activities, and the second area of the activity we would like to develop to strengthen the economy of this region, quite different from those being present for centuries, is generally speaking, health service, social service. This is an area of where sanatoria, state-owned and regional parliament-owned companies are located with a history of 200 years. They are attracting patients, people, elderly people, mainly from, not only from Poland, from Western countries like Germany, neighboring Czech Republic, Austria. So sanatoria health service, kind of a social service. So it's growing business, it's growing area, including, of course, a spa and geothermic sources of attraction. So it's probably the main three areas of potential development of this region. And we just recently we have some primary positive results of such approach, started not by myself and my team, but a few years ago, and it looks like it starts to work, and we hope we'll sell the hope that it would work out eventually pretty successfully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did anybody else on the panel want to address any of those the questions?
It is a very difficult question, like you said, because Milanówek is a very small garden city, and in opinion, the most of our citizens, and I think people from Warsaw who comes to us to live, for them the most important is to live in very small, very quiet and very good place for live, good place for live for their children, and good place to come back to from the job every day, especially for weeks. We have to do everything for that, because, like I said, our budget, it is half of them. It is the tax of the people. So the tax they would like to have for the thing which are interesting for them. Of course, 30 kilometers from Warsaw, it is only half an hour by train to the center of city. And then people have everything what they want. So they don't want to have in Milanówek nothing more than quiet. For me, it is difficult to plan how Milanówek will see for 50 years or 20 years maybe. But in our strategy, we especially think about that. So the trees, the houses. I said we've got the conservator ours under us, and so we can't do nothing more than we have now. It is 100 very small, not village, the city, but very small place without planning to be bigger. Just cooperate with Warsaw and in other small cities around us. For example, Podkowa Leśna, Brewinów, or Grodzisk Mazowiecki. our powiat. It is the place when we can look after the change for us. The industry in Warsaw, the workplace only in Warsaw and in Grodzisk Mazowiecki, in Pruszków also. But here in Milanówek, we should have good schools, good services, and good attractive. People who lives in our town and people who come to live, who would like to live, they would like that have.
And Tomasz?
Two kinds of things to say. One, I want to add to my own presentation that the qualified informers is a very important concept for getting data. Knowing who may know what and try from one informer, get to another, and then contrast the information and complement and build from that the system of data we need to have in order to take decisions in the absence of more structured traditional methods. The other thing, I would have a question to the presenters from Poland, which is how you ensure the continuity of very positive development activities in case of change of political color of the administration. Because this is an issue which has been faced by a number of countries, and there are some excellent examples of building coalitions over and above difference of political colors, and this is usually based with very strong involvement with communities, with local stakeholders, that whoever comes to power things will have to continue, the good things will have to continue, and not come, as it happened in some countries, to a situation then everything what the previous guy's done has to stop, and now we have our own new good things which we'll use for our own political ends. So do you are in the process of developing a mechanism and culture that ensures the continuity of positive initiatives beyond the political changes?
Thank you, Thomas. Just before you answer that, I just want to see if we got time for one more question to add to that from the group as well. Anybody else got anything? Yes, over there.
Chciałby Pan odpowiedzieć na to pytanie, bo to raczej do Pana niż do mnie.
Thank you for your presentations. I'm Bettina Knoop from Passau, and I have a question particularly to the Mayor of Wałbrzych, Mr. Szylomey. You were talking right now also about your perspectives for the future of Wałbrzych, which is selling hope, attracting new inhabitants or keeping the inhabitants which are already there. Now, Wałbrzych is a shrinking city, and signs are that it might continue to shrink despite all these efforts, that it might continue to shrink in the future. What I'm wondering is whether there have been any plans or development ideas for a city of Wałbrzych which is even smaller in 10 years and 20 years. So has there been a concept of Wałbrzych as a shrinking city with a good quality of life for the future? Has something like this been thought of or developed?
Well, I would like to first of all to try to respond to answer the question of the issue of shrinking towns and with the prospect of maintaining the vitality of the city within the smaller size in terms of population, as I understand. Is that correct? Okay. That's the challenge for hundreds of towns within Europe. and probably not only Europe. That's the issue. That's the challenge of our times. And dramatic changes in my city resulted in the decrease of the population by, let's say, 15%. And I hope, and I think we see some facts proving my hope that the process is now slowing down. So changes, which is probably inappropriate, it's not very much correct politically, but different changes within Europe and around Europe probably play a role in slowing down that process too, including Brexit, migration crisis, including different issues within Europe. So first of all, we hope that the population wouldn't be that much decreasing in years to come. We think, and there are some analyses that a city of 150 would survive within next 15, maybe 20 years, still being a city above 100,000, which means there wouldn't be a need for a critical strategic changes of the profile of the city. It wouldn't be the city of 60,000 within 20 years, even if the worst scenario would be practically implemented, let's say. So it's the question of becoming a small city with a higher standard of living and a higher quality of public service, quiet city, with people rather going to work to Wrocław or other cities by a very high-speed train or even hyperloop. Or it's not the future I see. I think we will simply we would love to be an average, multifunctional, well-developed, average in terms of the private income city within 15 or 20 years. And having such advantages like a nature, sport areas, castle, palaces, attractive places and points. That's my idea. And if I can, for 1 second, recall what my colleague said regarding the Hope Cellar. There is in the entrance hall of my hospital, which is a second home of my life. There is a sentence on the wall that, "Dear patient, we are trying our best to save your health, to save your life, but definitely we are always giving you the hope."
Thank you very much.
It was implemented there many years before.
Thank you very much. Because of time, I'm afraid we're going to have to sort of wind up now. And I mean, I could have sat here a lot longer and listened to what had to be said, and I'm sure other people could, but we do have other things to move on to. So I just wanted, before handing over to Pavel to sort of wind up quickly, I just wanted to give my thanks to everybody on the panel for your time. I do know, working with local politicians myself, how busy you are, and particularly in the office of mayor, and I think we're all grateful for you giving up your time, and it's been absolutely fascinating. Just before, I'm going to take a little bit of a liberty, I hope you don't mind. There's a very good colleague of mine who studies local politics with me in my university, Alistair Jones, who just heard this morning that he's been promoted to an associate professor. So I'd like to congratulate him for that. And he did also say that he's going to buy everybody a drink later on, which is very, very unusual. So he'll probably be coming knocking on your doors to interview you very soon. But thank you ever so much for your time. It's been great. And I know Pavel wants to say a few words.
So I understand that Alistair buys a drink for everyone today, which is a very good news. So just one sentence. I would like to place your attention to the fact that each of panelists today, in one way or another, was saying about how important is intermunicipal cooperation. Well, it was very clear in Milano-Warszawa relationship, but also in Wałbrzych, the issue has been mentioned as well, which I am very pleased that by stress of this fact, because as you might know, it has been recently one of my main topics of my research as well, together with Philippe Eteles. Well, I would like to thank you very much, our panelists, and I would like to help you, Tomek and Association, for the help to arrange this panel. And you are warmly invited to join us for at least for a coffee break, and you may stay as long as you want. We have an evening conference dinner tonight. If you have time, you are invited. But, well, it might be complicated, I know. And if you can stay for the coffee break and informally interact and discuss with participants of the conference, that would be excellent. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much. Today is last day of school and I have to come back.